It has been difficult to accept for many people, but Corvette C8 prices have been decreasing since August of last year. Yet, it was still possible to flip very low mileage examples, but this seems to be history now. Values are decreasing in the complete C8 market. Of course, prices are still far above MSRP, that's a fact. But before we look at the price trends, let's have a look at the current US market. Over here we have the market in the beginning of July, and you can see that it consists out of 2,623 cars. This is no longer a small market. You can also see that some 2023 cars are priced lower than the 2022, 2021 and 2020 cars. And the reason for this is that these cars are new cars. So let's identify them. We can see now that a significant share of new cars is priced at MSRP. But as we all know, it is unlikely that you will get them for this price. And speaking about prices, we can see that these cars are still very expensive. At the top end we find cars over $200,000, but these are the Callaway 35th anniversary editions. A bit lower we find some C8Rs, and the normal high-spec cars start around $140,000. Again, this means that you can still pay $20,000 to $30,000 over MSRP for a C8 Corvette. They do then also rank consistently among the cars that cost more used than new, and we can clearly see this. Having said that, the C8 market changed drastically during the last year. Prices are coming down as the cars started to depreciate and supply levels increased. Let's have a look at that. Over here we have the median price trends for the used and new C8s between June 2020 and now. But before we look at anything, I need to mention that the first data points do not give an accurate representation of the prices, as supply levels were very low back then. Yet, from November 2020 onwards there were a lot more cars for sale, so we can trust the data from that point onwards. Looking at the new market, we can see that prices have been climbing consistently. On the one hand, we can see that more and more dealers are advertising the cars with a market adjusted price instead of MSRP. We also need to take into account that Chevrolet has been increasing prices. Moving on to the used market, we can see that prices increased by 4.7% between November 2020 and August of last year. And it turns out that this was the market top. Compared to last year, used prices came down by 6.3% or approximately $7,000. If we split the market between the coupes and the convertibles, we can see that this drop is carried quite evenly across the market. Or in other words, the convertible and the coupe market moved in parallel. We can see that both came down by approximately 7% during the last 12 months. Both decreases are then also statistically confirmed, and this means that it is unlikely that they are the result of chance. However, as we will find out later in the video, there are market segments that saw a drop larger than 7%. Now today's market is clearly different from last year's market, and we don't need to look far to find reasons for the price decreases. Over here we have the market characteristics with the supply level, median mileage and median model year. And this reveals that supply levels continue to increase, especially in the used market. Currently there are 1,851 C8s for sale, and this is more than double of last year's number. With 477 cars, even new car supply is up by 47%. And these supply increases of course help to push prices down. Another thing that is key to the price decrease is the mileage increase. A used C8 tends to have a mileage of approximately 1,900 miles, whereas it used to be less than 1,200 miles 1 year ago. Finally then, looking at the graph on the right, we can see that the used market is now predominantly made up out of 2022 cars, and also this is an important change as we will find out soon. You see, if you are subscribed to this channel, this price decrease is no surprise to you. 1 year ago I already reported that the market was cracking, and since then I have been showing these decreasing price trends to you. However, we can dissect some additional insights from the data. For example, we can see that some market segments saw much larger price decreases than others, that flippers might be leaving the market, and that cars that are not driven still decreased in price. Over here we have the market broken down by model year, and if we start with the left graph, we can see that cars from all model years came down in price. Yes, even 2022 cars. However, compared to last year, 2022 and 2021 cars took a large hit. The cars from 2020 are down by 9% and the ones from 2021 by 11%. And with these price drops, the market segments perform worse than the 7% drop that we saw on an aggregate level. A big reason for these large drops we can see in the middle graph. Mileages for 2020 and 2021 cars are way up, so people use their cars for a few thousand miles and are now trying to sell it. Naturally, the higher the price, the lower the mileage, but this rule did not apply when the C8s were just released, but now it certainly does. Moreover, these price decreases are not just the result of these mileage increases, but more about that later. I would first like to take a moment and talk about this supply graph. We can see that supply levels for 2020 and 2021 cars are down from their peak in January. It is a bit speculative, but this might mean that a large portion of the people who intended to flip 2020 and 2021 cars did so and are now done with it. They drove their cars for a few thousand miles, sold it and moved on to something else. The remaining owners might hold on to their cars for a bit longer, as we can see clear dips in the supply levels. The story for 2022 cars is different. These cars have an extremely low mileage and compete directly with the new cars. Hence, the chances of flipping a 2022 car with a profit after you drove it a few miles were larger than for a 2021 or 2020 car. But with increasing supply levels, also this will soon be history. It does not mean that it was impossible to flip an older C8, just that it is likely that it has been more difficult. You see, we can see now for the first time that all cars are coming down in value even when they are not driven. And to have a look at this effect, we need to evaluate the market from a mileage perspective. But before we have a look at that, if you enjoyed this video, please support the channel by clicking on the like button down below. Thank you. Over here we have the price trends broken down by the mileage buckets. The green line, for example, shows the development for the cars with 1500 miles up to 3800 miles. And when we look at these trends, we can see that all cars came down in value since August 2021. But what does this mean? Well, it means that if you bought a car in August 2021, parked it in your garage and didn't drive it, it's likely that the car lost some of its value. There are some differences between the mileage buckets, but the general trend is down. We can see that the cars with the lowest miles came down the least, as the drop is only 3%, while cars with the higher mileages dropped slightly more by approximately 5%. Also, during the last 3 quarters, the lowest mileage bucket seems to be slightly more stable than the rest. These cars are the ones that are competing with the new cars, so as long as the waiting time for a new C8 Corvette is long, this segment might be more stable than the rest. And with that, it's time to wrap up and to place all of this in a context. It is clear that Corvette C8 prices are coming down, not crashing, just gradually decreasing. But this is of course not a surprise. Compared to last year, prices are down by approximately 7%. Or to put it in other words, the car started to depreciate. The depreciation effect is driven by 2 forces, the depreciation per year and the depreciation per 1000 miles driven. Starting with the latter one, we saw that mileage is increased in the market and that this continued to push prices down during the most recent quarters. Yet, we also saw a small depreciation per year effect. It is namely so that prices for all mileage buckets came down. If you had a C8 and did not drive it, it still lost some value. Now before I close the video, I need to mention a few things that, especially in the Corvette C8 videos, many people fail to understand. All of the numbers that I showed are on an aggregate level. They are based on 2,000 to 3,000 cars throughout time. It's therefore not impossible that you had a C8 and that you managed to sell it for a profit. Your experience is however only one data point and therefore does not give an accurate representation of the market movement, so try to detach that from the aggregate statistics. Furthermore, it is important that we consider these numbers in a wider context. Price trends in the exotic car market are flattening for the majority of the cars. Some cars even came down in price. And if you would like to know more about that, I recommend that you check out my Q2 exotic car market update by clicking right over here. The development in the C8 market is in line with the exotic car market. However, C8 price trends already topped in August of last year, and that is way earlier than what we saw for other exotic cars. Most of them saw a flattening of the price trend around late 2021 or the beginning of 2022. Again, there are enough reasons as to why price trends are flattening, but I recommend that you check out the Q2 market update for that. One idiosyncratic reason on top of the forces that are driving the complete market is the introduction of the Z06. I believe that the first customers should get the keys in late September, but as with anything these days, there could be some delays. The introduction of the Z06 could increase supply levels in the Stingray market, as many people might want to trade up from the Stingray to the Z06. This market dynamic is frequently commented under my C8 market update videos, but I am not sure if this will actually take place. If the Stingray price development is of any indication as to what will happen with Z06 prices, I think it's unlikely that you will find a Z06 at MSRP anytime soon. Hence, they will be significantly more expensive than a Stingray. I therefore wonder if they still appeal to the Stingray buyer. I'm not saying that there won't be an effect from the Z06 deliveries, just that I'm doubting the magnitude of it. Nevertheless, if we forget about the Z06 for a moment, I think it is only fair to expect a continuation of the downward price trend for the foreseeable future. There are no indications that the trend is about to turn. The downward trend is relatively strong, supply is up, and it fits with the development in the broader exotic car market. A turn towards the opposite direction is, in my opinion, highly unlikely. And with that, we arrived at the end of this video. Now, if you enjoyed this data-driven way of analyzing car markets, but would like to see the analysis for a different car, let me know the name of the car for which you would like to see an analysis by commenting it down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. Also, don't forget to subscribe and to click on the notification bell so you get actually notified when your requested analysis goes live. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week for a new video.